The Center, with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. So as we get ourselves together here, let me see who's in the building. We got BB4OD, Straight Black Pride, Sister Vanessa, BB4OD brother, you got ripped off. Straight Black Pride to Sister Nina, and BB4OD and Straight Black Pride to Brother Kevin. Sister Nina, do me a favor, send me your email address so I can send you a copy of the 2019 Dr. Khaled lecture. So, because I saw you sent me something earlier today. So, and well, number one, can y'all hear me? So, make sure the sound is correct. And if y'all can hear me, again, Sister Nina, be sure to send me your email address to my email running along the bottom, dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. Peace and blessings to Brother Crow. So I can send you that. And thank you for what you sent me, by the way. And Brother, you got ripped off, said that lecture's fire. He's seen multiple iterations of it. So I try to pick out tonight's music for what will be appropriate for a discussion that somebody asked me about my musical selections. Let's see. Can y'all even hit? Is that playing? Oh no. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little too mellow. Let me go back with let me try something else. Alright, there we go. That's gonna be tonight. I don't want to be too mellow because BB4OD to Sister Najee. There's more and more people coming to the building. I try to get everything set up. So, y'all know what I like to do. Well, no, this is something different, brother. Last time I played the blues. This is not the blues. Peace to Brother Derek. You know what I'm saying? Now, I mean, all right. Let's have the music debate and get that out the way now, since you know what I'm saying, everybody's a critic. Do y'all like the current song, or should I go through something else? You like the current song, put 1 in the chat. If you want a different song, put 2 in the chat. We'll do it like that. I'll be sipping some coffee while I'm waiting for you all to make the decision. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all how this came about, because I had no intention of coming on tonight, right, at all. And literally, I woke up, I thought about it, and I was like, let me see what's going on. and I see that Israel has blown up some humanitarian people, and then next thing I know, I see they hit Syria, and I'm like, well, got to talk about this, because I don't like to. I mean, it's important. It's been an important story, but I don't like to rehash and keep going over stuff. I do like to keep up with stuff, but it's been some months. And when I saw what was going on, I'm like, okay, yeah, I gotta talk about this, And so that's how we got here. Now, I'm going to say this. Y'all know, rarely, those who know me know, rarely do I toot my own horn on social media and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna lie. The thumbnail that I came up with here is pretty much the best thumbnail I've ever come up with, right? And so I just wanted to keep it up somewhat in view. And explain the thumbnail, which has Western Israel on one side and the world on the other. And somebody can be like, well, brother, what is Western Israel? Western Israel, in this case, is simply the unification of the United States of America and Israel, right? As one represented as one country, because we remember earlier they came up with those flags of the United States and the United States flag melding into the Israeli flag, right? We saw that, right? So since that's where we are, and that's the position that America took at the beginning of this conflict when those flags were revealed, I said, all right, I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that concept. I'm gonna use the flag, I'm gonna use the concept, and that's what we're gonna talk about. So we're gonna talk about tonight. The official title is Israel leading America into war? When in reality, is America leading the world into World War III? But, for the sake of the algorithm or whatever, that's what we say. Sister Najee says she loved the content. Appreciate you, sister. So yeah, that's what the discussion is going to be. And the first thing that I'm going to do before we get started, brother, you got ripped off, says, oh yeah, I heard about the aid workers because the dude is pro-Israel but feeding Palestinians. Well, yeah, we're gonna get to that. I didn't know who this person was. He's famous, but we're gonna hear from him. He said something very interesting, and it's interesting because I watched the apparently he did an interview, and I watched it from a couple of different sources, and depending on where you watch it, they chopped it up in an interesting way, and they took out a part that was interesting. So I had to kind of put it back together, but not so long that it would be distracting. So how am I going to start this off? Yeah, all right, this is what we're going to start off. I think I've explained the Western Israel concept, but we're going to show it. We're going to show how the Western Israel concept actually works, right? As one, almost, being completely honest, it's almost like a parasitic relationship, right? We have a large organism, the United States, a small organism that feeds off it and that will die if it can't feed off it, right? So I know that may sound harsh, but y'all know what I say. Documentation beats conversation. So let us begin. First of all, we're going to begin with, and y'all gonna laugh. Those who've been following me a long time, you're gonna laugh at my source. We're gonna look at the Council on Foreign Relations report on U.S. aid to Israel in 4 charts, right? Because we're talking about this war. And so the question is, all right, you say that, United States and Israel are one thing. Oh, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let the Council of Foreign Relations say it. Now, for those of y'all who have seen my lecture on Memorandum 46, who can tell me who was one of the founders of the Council of Foreign Relations is? I'll give you all about 15 seconds or so to come up with that. Don't see anyone with the answer thus far. Well, I'll get into the article and then we'll come back to it. All right. So it says, the United States was the first country to recognize the provisional government of the State of Israel upon its founding in 1948. And it has for many decades been a strong and steady supporter of the Jewish state. Israel has received hundreds of billions, with a B, of dollars in U.S. foreign aid in the post-World War II era, a level of support that reflects many factors, including a U.S. commitment to Israel's security and the country's shared policy interest in a volatile and strategically important part of the world. Excuse me. The countries do not, listen to this part now. The countries do not have a mutual defense pact, as the United States has with allies such as Japan and fellow members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. However, Israel is among a short list of major non-NATO allies and has privileged access to the most advanced U.S. military platforms and technologies. Let's stop right there. See, this is some very important information here, right? Let's go back and read the beginning. This is a key part. The two countries do not have a mutual defense pact, as the United States has with Japan and NATO. Now, you're like, okay, brother, what does that mean? This is what that means. Greetings, Lee Clinton. This is what that means. The United States has a mutual defense pact with NATO, which I discussed that in another video where sister asked a question, right? This means if the United States is attacked, NATO has signed on to help defend the United States. If the NATO states are attacked, the United States has signed on and they must defend those countries. Like, so Britain and France and all that, right? Which is why the Russian war is important, which we will get to later on, because Zelensky in the Ukraine is attempting to join NATO. At which point, if Zelensky joins NATO while there's still a war going on between Russia and the Ukraine, the moment that pact is signed, the United States would then be obligated to defend the Ukraine against Russia, thereby taking the United States into a war with Russia, right? We got that part. Now, this states that there is no bilateral commitment between the two countries. But what happened? The U.S. funds Israel with billions of dollars. So what does that really mean? If you really look at it, it means in reality, Israel has no obligation to come to the aid of the United States in a wartime situation because they don't have a bilateral agreement, defense agreement. But the United States has voluntarily made an exception for Israel and has basically pledged to defend Israel at all costs. Think about that for a moment. You can't find any other country where the United States has this type of relationship, where it's a non-reciprocal relationship where another country has access to vast amounts of money from the United States government with no obligation to, in any way, shape, or form, reciprocate that policy with the United States, right? I want us to think about that, because I don't think anybody ever puts it out there and looks at it that way, because nobody sits around and looks at this so-called relationship. It's the equivalent of if you were in a relationship, these were two people. It's the equivalent of the husband going out and working, right? And he's like, I'm gonna pay all the bills, I just need you to stay home and watch the kids and this and that. And I'm gonna be completely faithful to you. And the wife says, I agree to that. And I may be faithful to you, or I may not, because hey, I got to do what I got to do for my survival. Like, no one would sign up for that, right? We would look at that man like, bro, what are you doing? Why you getting a marriage where it's closed on your end and open on her end? And if it was a woman, we know if it's a woman, and some woman says she agreed to allow her husband to cheat and she's going to be faithful, we know everybody be looking at her like, are you crazy? Even if she said, well, he's rich. At least if no one else, at least other women would be like, I don't know about that, because he can do this and that and this and that and so forth, so on. And I would be like, yeah, that's kind of crazy. You must really like that money. But that's the relationship that the United States has with Israel, right? All right, let's move forward. Now it says, and this is, I believe this article is about 3 months ago, it says about half of Americans hold favorable views of Israel, according to recent polls. But ongoing U.S. military aid to Israel has come under greater scrutiny amid Israel's war with Hamas, spurred by the Palestinian militant October 7th terrorist attack that killed more than 1,200 Israelis, the deadliest such attack in the country's history. And we talked about previously how it appears, right, that Israel was warned about it, but allowed it to take place anyway. The best reason we can come up with is the fact that the Palestinians are sitting on a boatload of oil underneath their feet. And this gives the Israelis an excuse to remove those people out the way, claim that property, make it beachfront property, and utilize the oil. But hey, some of that is speculation. We're going to generally stick to the facts. Now, it says some U.S. lawmakers and foreign leaders, the United Nations, human rights and activist groups, and other parties have voiced growing concerns about the scale of Israel's war to, quote unquote, eliminate Hamas. They have been especially critical of the heavy bombing of the Gaza Strip, which has reportedly killed more than 25,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians. Let's stop right there. Here's what's important to look at. This is the Council of Foreign Relations report. This is not some, I don't know, liberal, or this isn't Al Jazeera or some anti-Israel foreign group. This is the Council of Foreign Relations, right? Putting out this information. Now, it says, how much U.S. aid does Israel receive? Now it says Israel has been the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign aid since its founding, receiving about $300 billion adjusted population in total economic and military aid. The United States has also provided large foreign aid packages to other Middle Eastern countries, particularly Egypt and Iraq, but Israel stands alone. Now let's stop right here. What's the key part that's being left out of this statement about Iraq? The United States has provided large foreign aid packages to other Middle Eastern countries, particularly Egypt and Iraq, but Iraq, of course, was completely destroyed by the United States. That little part of the equation was left out. So spending money to rebuild something that you obliterated kind of is not the same thing, right? Now, let's look at this chart here. 300 billion, right, for Israel. Next on the list is Egypt. Underneath that is Afghanistan. What's the key part about Afghanistan? Another country that the United States went to obliterate. So the United States spent money in Afghanistan to fund Afghanistan's fight against the Soviet Union at the time, and then went in Afghanistan to blow up the rest. Next is what? South Vietnam. The United States spent a lot of money in South Vietnam, a whole war in South Vietnam. So Israel has received more money than a country that the United States fought a whole war in. And then Iraq, another country that the United States fought. So let's think about this. Israel has received more money cumulatively than Iraq and Afghanistan together. And we know we've sent boatloads of money over there. And Israel has received more money and will continue to receive more money. Now, it says the United States provided Israel considerable economic assistance from 1971 to 2007. But nearly all U.S. aid today goes to support Israel's military. Support what? Israel's military. The most advanced in the region. Let's stop right there. Israel's military is the most advanced in the region because what? The United States funds Israel's military. So if Mr. Biden was in any way serious about any discussions about stopping genocide from taking place, or saying Israel has gone too far, or any other rhetoric that he wants to put out, it's irrelevant. He's just talking to be talking because you're funding the genocide. Let's just call it what it is. People are being murdered. Civilians are being destroyed. Aid workers are being destroyed. And you're calling Netanyahu like, hey man, you need to do what? Because you are handing him the gun, watching him shoot people, and then we're like, whoa man, you shooting people, that's crazy. So, but I digress. Now, it says the United States has provisionally agreed via memorandum of understanding to provide Israel with nearly $4 billion, with a B, $4 billion a year, not $4 billion through 2028, but $4 billion a year through 2028. And U.S. lawmakers are considering billions of dollars in supplemental funding for Israel just for its conflict with Hamas. Okay, this is 2024, $4 billion. 2025, 2025, $4 billion. 2026, $4 billion. 2027, $4 billion. 2028, $4 billion. That's $20 billion and more supplementary funding. We have no idea what that is. But let's just say, for all we know, it could be $50 billion total, right? Of your tax-paying money going to Israel for them to get more weapons to blow up, not just people, as we see now, not just people in Palestine, not just Hamas but people in Syria, right? I mean, hey, it's crazy to me. Now it says, how does Israel use the aid? Most of the aid, approximately $3.3 billion a year, is provided as grants under the Foreign Military Finance Program, funds that Israel must use to purchase U.S. military equipment and services. Israel has also historically been permitted to use a portion of its FMF aid to buy equipment from Israeli defense firms. A benefit not granted to other recipients of U.S. military aid. But this domestic procurement is to be phased out in the next few years. U.S. also reportedly accounts for some 15% of Israel's defense budget. Israel, like many other countries, also buys U.S. military products outside of the FMF program. Additionally, $500 million a year is slated for Israeli and joint U.S.-Israeli missile defense programs, in which the two countries collaborate on the research, development, and production of these systems used by Israel, including the Iron Dome, David Sling, and the Arrow 2. The Iron Dome was solely developed by Israel, but the United States has been a production partner since 2014. For instance, the U.S. military contractor Raytheon manufactures Tamir interceptor missiles for Israel's Iron Dome at its facilities in Arizona. So, as we see, the United States is responsible for 15% of Israel's defense budget, but there's also additional off-the-book stuff, and they also get the special treatment of being able to take some of the United States money and funnel it directly into Israeli defense contractors, something that no one else has. So we can just be honest that people say, oh, it's a special relationship. You get no more special than this, at least on Israel's end, right? Now, one thing I want to do as we discuss this this Western Israel concept, I want to look at the cabinet of the United States, right? And Wikipedia breaks it down for us. It says the cabinet of the United States is the principal of official advisory body to the president of the United States. The cabinet meets with the president in a room adjacent to the Oval Office. The president chairs the meetings, but is not formally a member of the cabinet. The heads of departments appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate are members of the cabinet. And acting department heads also participate in cabinet meetings, whether or not they have been officially nominated for Senate confirmation. The president may designate heads of other agencies and non-Senate confirmed members of the executive office of the president as members of the cabinet. The cabinet does not have any collective executive powers or functions of its own, and no votes need to be taken. There are 26 members, the vice president, 15 department heads, and 10 cabinet level officials, all except 2 require Senate confirmation. During cabinet meetings, the members sit in order of their respective department, in the order in which their respective departments were created, with the earliest being closest to the president and the newest being furthest away. The members of the cabinet serve at the pleasure of the president, who can dismiss them at any time without approval from the Senate, as affirmed by the Supreme Court of the United States in Myers versus the United States in 1926, or downgrade their cabinet membership status. Stop right there. Someone's going to ask me, brother, why? Why are you going through all of this? Remember, we have 25 members plus a vice president, 15 principal officers, 10 other members. Let us now look at Mr. Biden's cabinet when he came into office. We got, I see real black gentlemen entered the building. And I see the integrative school psychologist has entered the building. Peace to you, sister, and peace to you, brother. Now, we're going to look here at this document, and I don't know who came up with it, but salute to them. It said, they ask a question. They say, just how diverse is Biden's Jewish Catholic cabinet? Number 1, White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain. Ron Klain is Jewish. Number 2, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Mr. Blinken is Jewish. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen. You get the point here. U.S. Ambassador to Israel. I don't think we have to say anything. Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. Well, that's a surprise that Alejandro Mayorkas, according to them, is Jewish. Anyone wants to look these up and dispute that, let us know. Member of the Council of Economic Advisors. Now, I'm not sure if that's a cabinet level position, but we know Jared Bernstein is Jewish. We don't have to ask. COVID-19 czar Jeff Zients. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry. I forgot about that. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. Deputy Secretary of State, which is not a cabinet level position, Wendy Ruth Sherman. So that means if the Secretary of State dies, I guess she takes over. Science and Technology Advisor Eric Lander. Goodness. Deputy National Security Advisor Ann Neuberger. And didn't what was that? Victoria Nuland, she just resigned her position. Okay, U.S. Special Representative for Iran, Robert Malley. What in the world is the Special Representative for Iran gonna be Jewish? Now we know what anyway. The Vice President's husband, Doug Emhoff, U.S. Special Envoy to Germany, Amy Gutman. So let's see, have I missed anybody? Let's see. U.S. Energy Envoy Amos Hochstein, and Federal Communications Acting Chair Jessica Rosenworcel. And of course, the U.S. Special Envoy Ambassador to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism, that goes without saying, Deborah Lipstadt. So from what I've seen here, we have approximately about 12 cabinet level members, which would be about 50% of the cabinet, and also some other high level officials who are right underneath it, who are members of Biden's cabinet and his inner circle. Now, normally, you wouldn't think anything about it except for the fact that Jewish people represent 2.5% of the population, but appear to be 50% or more of the cabinet. So when we talk about the concept of Western Israel, this is a part of what we're talking about here. How does a group of people who represent 2.5% of the population get to make up 50% of the cabinet? We're asking questions. So when we see how the United States treats Israel, it's obvious that maybe it's a possibility that some of the people in the cabinet are affecting the policy that the United States government, and specifically in this case, the executive branch, is acting. Now, I saw this part, and this kind of surprised me. As we go further down in this document, it says Jewish members of Congress. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I never really thought about it. I never really thought it was that many people, and it didn't, it's like whatever, right? Because there are 435 members of Congress. But just check this out. Just check out this list. And I believe we may have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. So about 8% of the 117 Congress was Jewish? I didn't know that. Let's go over some of the members. Michael Bennett of Colorado, Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, Ben Cardin, I know about him, he's Maryland. Dianne Feinstein, she's no longer with it. She deceased? Y'all remind me, I can't remember. I don't think she's with us anymore. But John Ossoff of Georgia, Jackie Rosen of Nevada, Bernie Sanders of Vermont, Brian Schatz of Hawaii, Charles Chuck Schumer of New York. That's no shock. Ryan Wyden of Oregon, Jack Auchincloss of Massachusetts. Never heard of that person. Steve Cohen of Tennessee, David Cicilline of Rhode Island, Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon. Okay, didn't see that coming. Ted Deutsch of Florida, Lois Frankel of Florida, Josh Gottenheimer of New Jersey, Sarah Jacobs of California, David Kustoff of Tennessee, Andy Levin of Michigan, Mike Levin, and maybe it's Levine, but there's no E on the end, of California, Alan Lowenthal of California, Elaine Luria of Virginia, Kathy Manning of North Carolina, Jerry Nadler of New York, Dean Phillips of Minnesota, Jamie Raskin of Maryland. We don't even have, Maryland doesn't even have that many. They got 2 Jewish members of Congress. You don't even have that many representatives. Anyway, Jan Schakowsky of Illinois, Adam Schiff of California, Brad Snyder of Illinois, Kim Schreier of Washington, Brad Sherman of California, Alyssa Slotskin of Michigan, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and that's no shock, Florida, Susan Wild of Pennsylvania, and John Yarmouth of Kentucky. Now, that's a long list. I don't know if I talked about this, but there was discussion of them starting a Jewish, you know how they got Congressional Black Caucus. There was a discussion of a Jewish caucus, a Congressional Jewish Caucus being founded. And at the time, I just was like, well, that's interesting, because this is what I was thinking in my apparent ignorance. I was like, y'all don't even have that many people, and you already have a lot of influence. So why would they waste time doing that? And now I'm sitting up here reading a list of nearly 40 people. Remember, there's 435 representatives and 100 senators, right? So 535 total, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me, make sure I'm correct. And you're talking about 40 people. who come from a pool of only 2.5%. I had no idea. So now we know. But it's not just the fact that we have the number of people, right? But it's also the influence that the people and that lobby had. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, I'm going to go to here's what I'm going to do. Because we talked about the cabinet and we talked about the members of Congress. But what I'm going to do is pull up an oldie but a goodie, because we got to talk about what the president himself said, because the president made a statement that I like to remind people that he said. Let's go to Mr. Biden before he was president of the United States.
Unique and how can I say it? So strong with Jews worldwide. There is a. I mean, I used to say early on when I was a kid, I'd say when I was a young senator, I'd say if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
While some American progressives and liberals have claimed Israel is the cause or at least the beneficiary of the current Iraq war, Biden takes a different view.
When the Baker Commission filed its report saying peace in Israel is related to Iraq, if you may, I was the first and only person in the Congress to point out, if tomorrow peace broke out in between Israelis and Palestinians, does anybody think there wouldn't be a full-blown war in Iraq? And conversely, if Iraq were transported to Mars, does anyone think there would not be the terrorism visited upon the Israelis every day? And so let's get it straight. Israel is not the cause of Iraq. Iraq, being settled or not settled, has nothing to do with Israel's conduct. The second part is people should understand by now, this should be crystal clear, that Israel is the single greatest strength America has in the Middle East. I always say to my friends when they say those things to you, I say, imagine our circumstance in the world were there no Israel. How many battleships would there be? How many troops would be stationed?
Jonathan Pollard has been held in American prison for the past 22 years. While Senator Biden hinted at possible leniency, the senator made it clear he would not grant Pollard a pardon.
Now, there's a rationale, in my view, why Pollard should be given leniency. There's a rationale for that. But there is not a rationale to say, no, what happened did not happen and should be pardoned. And my worry is that if I were president, to go and pardon Pollard, you didn't ask me that question, right, but to pardon Pollard would make a lie out of the notion that there are certain rules, period. You cannot give classified information, period, even to a friend. If this were Great Britain, it would be the same thing.
Now, we see that going back, that clip goes back to 2007. And greetings, Sister Ray Bay. Good to see you. We see that he's always like from minute one. He's been. What I realize is where he states the first time I saw him stated where I'm what did he always say? I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, right? That in that interview he says that, and he's been saying that in interviews up to I saw him say that same line some months ago. So he has stated publicly that he is a Zionist, which explains his cabinet, right? But when you tell people this and you show it to them and you play it for them, People just they don't get, and I'm not saying not just black people, I'm saying nobody gets it. I'm saying white people don't get it, black people don't get it, Hispanics don't get it, Asians don't care. You know what I'm saying? Nobody grasps the concept. So now, when the war breaks out and all you know what breaks loose, then everybody's like, oh, I can't believe that the US is funding destruction of. He's a Zionist. Whatever the Zionist goal is, whatever the Zionist cause is, that's what he's going to do, right? So if a Zionist is running the country is going to be run the way the Zionists want America to be run because the American president has stated he's a Zionist, right? Now, it's not just the president. I mean, the president, it would be bad enough if it was just the president. But it's not just the president. It's the Congress. So when I find this clip, I'm going to play this clip of Dr. Cynthia McKinney. I want y'all to listen to Dr. Cynthia McKinney as she explains how AIPAC works.
Candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput. I made it public. This probably nobody had said anything about it. But I made it public, and then, the excuse was, well, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed. And but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And then, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign. And whether it's a woman's organization, an environmental organization, people can read about this on the internet if they're interested. If you go to thomas.loc.gov, that is the official United States Congress website. And if you put in the name Gus Savage, because Gus Savage was a black member of Congress who was targeted by the pro-Israel lobby. And he had the foresight to use his position as an incumbent in the House of Representatives to put his experience on the congressional record. For the entire existence of the United States Congress now, people will be able to access his experience. And what he wrote was that it was the Garden Club of New Jersey that gave his opponent $5,000. But it wasn't really the Garden Club of New Jersey. It was the activists who were associated with AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Well, the
All right. Y'all can hear me, right? Okay. I wanted to make sure I could be heard. Now, let's think about this for a minute. Dr. Cynthia McKinney was representing Black people in Georgia. She was doing what she felt needed to be done for Black people in Georgia. And the reason that Dr. Cynthia McKinney is no longer a congressperson is not because the people in Georgia felt like she wasn't doing her job, or not because of any type of scandal, or not because of some improprieties, or not because of, like, you name it, like all the stuff we think about. No, Dr. Cynthia McKinney is no longer a member of Congress because she refused to sign a pledge to say that she's going to bow down to a foreign country, because I'm pretty sure that when she won her election, she goes to Congress and swore on the Bible that she will defend the Constitution of the United States and the republic that it represents. I'm pretty sure that's how that works, right? Now, if I'm incorrect on that, how it works, then y'all let me know. So if you've been elected by people in America and a segment of America, and you go there and you swear on the Bible, or maybe Muslims bring the Holy Quran with them, I don't know, or whatever whatever book you got, or you bring, you African spiritualist, you bring your altar, or however it works for people who aren't Christian, and maybe they make everybody swear on the Bible. However it goes, you pledge to defend the Constitution of the United States and carry out your duties as a congressperson or senator or whatever with honor. That does not include, you know what I'm saying? And let's say in 1791, that did not include a pledge to Israel. Well, you like, brother, Israel didn't exist. Exactly my point. That's my point. It's not part of your duty, your elective duty as a United States congressperson, to pledge to the United States one day and then the next day to pledge to Israel. But apparently, according to Dr. Cynthia McKinney, something has changed, and now that indeed is the case. So now I think we have definitively, and if y'all don't feel that I have definitively, y'all let me know. I feel that we have definitively defined why we currently refer to what was the United States of America as Western Israel. And brother, you got ripped off says, I've taken 3 oaths with fingers behind my back: military oath, postal oath, and marriage vows. And salute to you and your marriage. And I forgot, brother, you got ripped off. I missed your super chat earlier. Says the chat must be flabbergasted with this info. It was quiet at first, and it was quiet in the chat. I'm just assuming everybody was listening and not bored. But yeah, we don't look at these things. And I'm gonna be honest, even though I know sometimes I still sit there and I read this stuff, and I'm just astounded because it's never part of the popular discourse, right? By the way, let me remind you all again, anyone, because we're in a new month, anyone who donates at least $20 during a month will receive the 2019 Dr. Khaled Day lecture. If you donated $20, more than $20 last month, and you have not received your link for that lecture, please send me an email at dc.radical_1@protonmail.com. I believe I may have missed the integrative school psychologist. I'm pretty sure you donated more than 20 last month. Please, sister, send me your email so I can get that out to you. And I will be editing some other videos this weekend that virtually no one has seen. Now, let me get back to the next article, which is from Newsweek. That I thought this was a free article, but it kind of like they just refused to take that thing off of the screen. And it says, this is how AIPAC works. What is AIPAC? AIPAC is the American Israeli Political Action Committee. An AIPAC and Capitol Hill veteran explains the lobby's tactics of reward and retribution, the carrot and the stick. And here we have Senator Ben Cardin, the Democrat from Maryland, and Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina. Now, as far as I know, Lindsey Graham is not he's not Jewish, but is a strong supporter of Israel. And this is from March. That picture is from March 1st, 2015. Now, this says, one thing that should be said about Representative Ilhan Omar's tweets. And I'll just be honest, I'm not a fan of Miss Omar, but that's neither here nor there. About the power of American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, commonly more commonly known as AIPAC. Not sure if I said that correct the first time. Let's read that again. American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, or more commonly known, the Jewish or Israel Lobby, is that the hysterical reaction to it proved her point. The power of AIPAC over members of Congress is literally awesome, although not in a good way. So not the colloquial use of awesome, but awesome as in overwhelming, right? Has anyone ever seen so many members of Congress of both parties running to their microphones and sending out press releases to denounce one first-termer for criticizing the power of a lobby? All right, this might be interesting. Let's see. Somehow, I don't think the reaction would have been the same if she had tweeted that Congress still supports the ethanol subsidy because the American Farm Bureau and other components of the corn ethanol lobby spends millions of dollars to keep this agribusiness bonanza going, which they do. Or that if she had opposed the ethanol subsidy, she would have been accused of hating farmers. That's American politics. The only difference between all the domestic lobbies that essentially buy support for their agenda. Let's stop right there. What do? Lobbies buy support for their agendas. This is saying right here that the American government is for sale. I don't know if they meant to say that, but they said it. They stated, I gotta read this again. That's American politics. The only difference between all the domestic lobbies that essentially buy support for their agenda is that AIPAC is working for a foreign government. Now let's stop right there. If the domestic lobbies buy support for their agenda, and then AIPAC is working for a foreign government, that means that a foreign government is buying support for the foreign government's agenda. Let's just stop right there and take a moment to think about that. If the AIPAC is the most powerful lobby, and lobbyists buy support for their agenda, thus buying the government, parts of the government to support their agenda, then that means that AIPAC controls the agenda of the United States in whatever Israel's interests are, and with this case would be foreign policy and getting money. This is not me. We're just connecting and not. This is what article is it? This is Newsweek. This is not me telling you this. This is Newsweek telling you that AIPAC buys the government. In addition to the fact of having multiple people at a cabinet level position and having nearly 40 senators and Congress people. So when we talk about Western Israel, this is what we're talking about, right? Now, it says AIPAC is working for a foreign government, a distinction, but not much of a difference when it goes to maintain a status quo that is what? Not necessarily in the national interest. The status quo is what? Not in the national interest or the interest of America. What did Omar tweet that was so terrible anyway? Actually, it was two tweets that produced the unsettling but also telling coming together of President Donald Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Now, hold up. Anything that Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi can agree on, that's just crazy. They don't agree on anything. They don't agree that the other person should be breathing. In common denunciation of Omar. Omar's crime, daring to suggest that campaign contributions orchestrated by AIPAC play a large part in achieving bipartisan support for anything proposed by the Israeli government or its lobby AIPAC. You know, I mean, I don't like Miss Omar, but she's right. What is there to say? Like, how can anybody even debate what she's saying? But we know how it works. They didn't debate what she was saying. If I had to bet $5 versus 5 donuts, all that happened was they called her anti-Semitic. Let's move forward. This, of course, something everyone knows, which even a former president of AIPAC once admitted in a conversation that was recorded by an interlocutor. In fact, as early as 1988, 60 Minutes did a segment on how AIPAC divvies up the money. Moreover, I, as an employee of the lobby from 1973 to 1975 and from 1982 to 1986, repeatedly and personally witnessed the whole process of funding and defunding, which is anything but a secret within the organization. Additionally, I spent close to 20 years as a legislative assistant to Democratic House and Senate members and saw AIPAC's tactics of reward and retaliation from that vantage point as well. Officially, of course, AIPAC does not engage in political fundraising. It would be illegal to do so. And the lobby is vehement on the point that it doesn't. Let's stop right there. We have a lobby working in the interest of a foreign government, raising money, which is illegal. And yet everyone knows it and turns a blind eye to it, which is why, once again, we say this is Western Israel, because the rules to the game do not apply to this state. Let's move forward. And it is true that, to my knowledge, it does not directly raise money to support or defeat candidates, but that is just a technicality. Political fundraising is a huge part of AIPAC's operation. One of the 3 top positions in its massive Washington, D.C. headquarters is that of political director, who runs both the Washington political operations. His annual salary is over $450,000. We're in the wrong business, ladies and gentlemen, because if you work for AIPAC, you don't. If you have less than the top position, I'm sure you're clearing $10,000 a month. This guy's clearing nearly $40,000 a month. And deputy regional directors around the country. Here is how AIPAC describes what these officials do, as described in a help wanted description for a Los Angeles deputy regional political director. Help track House and Senate races in your region. Assist with planning and executing local congressional club events and congressional club components in local events. Attend and assist in regional events. Establish and maintain contact with House and Senate campaigns to assist in the scheduling of candidate meetings and facilitate the submission of position papers. Position papers means what you are going to tell them to do. You're writing your position or the position of AIPAC, and this is what they're going to do, right? Solicit financial support for AIPAC's annual campaign. That means get money. Conduct candidate meetings, mean have a meeting with the candidate to tell them what they better do. Research, track, and record FEC and polling data so they can figure out who to back and who to leave alone. Work with colleagues to increase pro-Israel political participation in the region. And it says solicit congressional club commitments. Assist with AIPAC legislative grassroots mobilizations. Assist with scheduling and organizing of caucuses in the region and lobbying appointments during the AIPAC policy conference. Assist with the integration of AIPAC's activist base in the Jewish and outreach communities. Not just in the Jewish communities, but in other communities. Most of the time when they talk about outreach communities, guess who's involved in that? That means random Negroes who don't know any better, right? And research and gather information requested by pro-Israel political activists. Now, if we got anybody that's light-skinned or we got any non-black people in the chat, hey, this job was open. You know, you could have joined and gave us some intel, but I'm sure they do very thorough background checks. Says not mentioned is what all that information is used for: political fundraising. That means making sure that the pro-Israel PAC know what to do with their money and making sure that individual donors know what to do with theirs. This is why AIPAC has a large national political operation. If it were not in the money distribution business, it would simply rely on its legislative department to lobby for and draft legislation for members of Congress. Nor would its political director make nearly $500,000 a year. In short, AIPAC's political operation is used precisely as Representative Omar suggested. Again, I know this because I witnessed it over and over and over. I sat in AIPAC staff meetings at which the political director discusses whom we would be supporting in this campaign and who we were going to destroy in this campaign. I also sat in on meetings at AIPAC's huge annual policy conference, attended by as many as 20,000 AIPAC members and virtually the entire Congress, at which fundraising pitches were made. AIPAC, of course, denies that anyone raises money at its policy conference. And it's true. No one does in the official AIPAC rooms. However, there are also the side rooms, nominally independent of the main event, but just down the hall, where candidates and invited donors, also only the really, really wealthy donors, get the invites. Now, how much does anybody want to bet that some of the people that we have talked about in other broadcasts, right? Like Ron Burkle, for example. How much you want to bet that Ron Burkle has probably been to one of these AIPAC meetings and has been asked to open up his wallet? I mean, if he give Puffy $100 million, I'm sure he can cover this, right? Maybe Clive Davis. Like, I'm sure that if we started digging in, we will find some of the people we've talked about in other shows also found their way here. Not to mention the fact that I haven't researched it. But again, I bet $5 against 5 donuts that Mr. Epstein has been to some of these AIPAC meetings and has directed some of his friends to raise some money there because, of course, he was friends with Mr. Clinton. So I have no doubt he was connected politically. So I have absolutely no doubt that Mr. Epstein has been to one of these meetings. I can't prove it, but again, I'll bet you $5 to 5 donuts, right? Says the side rooms. Okay, nope, I already read the side rooms. But in fact, there are most exclusive venues in the country for candidates to raise money in the name, and y'all just threw up some, come on now, excuse me, in the name of advancing the AIPAC cause. AIPAC denies fundraising precisely the way Captain Renault in the film Casablanca declared he was shocked to find out gambling is going on in his establishment. As he is saying it, one of the club's crooks hands him a wad of cash saying, "You're winning, sir." Oh, man. Same with AIPAC. We do not donate to campaigns. Quote unquote, here's your check. Or more usually a bundle of checks that are not traceable back to AIPAC because on paper, at least, they come from individuals who like a candidate stand on Israel or Iran sanctions, as told to them by AIPAC's political operatives. So enough about AIPAC's fundraising denials, which insult the intelligence of everyone who hears them. Except, check this out. Political activist A.D. Barkin describes how a congressional candidate he worked for scored $5,000 from an AIPAC representative just by promising to support AIPAC's pet issue. Easy money. Back to Representative Omar, the first tweet, which resulted in ominous storm clouds over her head, was her response to a journalist who asked, by tweet of course, what accounted for such fierce defense of a foreign country by U.S. political leaders, even if it meant attacking the free speech right of Americans. Omar responded, this is hilarious. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. In light of everything that's going on, for her to say that is hilarious to me. Breezely referring to $100 bills. That was bad enough, suggesting that campaign contributions play a part in AIPAC's success at garnering support for legislation. Come on now. Legislation that reads like it's written by the Likud Central Committee. All right. I think we have covered that part of the show. And Daniil Davis says they've got a more sophisticated control than most of us are aware of. Absolutely. And we're just dealing with the political situation, right? Because again, the subject is Western Israel versus everybody else, which I'm not gonna lie, I almost want to do a whole lecture on this. Almost, but not quite. Now, let's go to Al Jazeera, somebody that we can expect them to go against Israel. Says complicity. Leaders, activists slam U.S. for sending more arms to Israel. Media reports say the U.S. has agreed to transfer a new weapons package worth $2.5 billion to Israel amid the ongoing Gaza war. Now, this was just last week. It says the United States has greenlit the transfer of a new $2.5 billion weapons package comprising of bombs and fighter jets to Israel, according to U.S. media reports. Despite expressing concern about civilian casualties in Gaza, the White House arms package includes more than 1,800 MK-84 2,000-pound bombs and 500 MK-82 500-pound bombs, according to the Pentagon and Department of State officials, the Washington Post reported. The 2,000-pound bombs, which can inflict damage to people up to 1,000 feet away, have been linked to previous mass casualty events throughout Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Many leaders and human rights activists around the world have criticized the U.S. for sending more arms to Israel. especially as Benjamin Netanyahu's government promises to launch in our. If he said it, ain't it? I don't think promise is the word we looking for. But anyway, launch an offensive in Rafah, the last refuge of more than 1 million displaced Palestinians. Now let's stop right there. If the last refuge of 1 million Palestinians is in Rafah and they're going to launch an offensive there, that means they conducted a genocidal campaign. That's all it means. And according to activists and other people, the United States would then be involved in genocide. Right? Now, somebody stop me if I'm lying. Am I being hyperbolic? Am I making up stuff? Like, if you hand the person the gun and the bullets and they go in somebody's house and kill everybody in that house, are you not at least complicit in that murder? Let's move forward. Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs, in a statement posted on X, the ministry condemned Washington's actions and said that demanding Netanyahu to stop killing civilians and supplying him with weapons is unprecedented, principled, and moral contradiction. The ministry also expressed regret at the ongoing failure on the part of the UN Security Council and the International Criminal Court of Justice to ensure Israel respects their decisions. Let's just be honest. The only way to make sure that those decisions are respected are either, as he points out, stop the weapons or actually attack Israel. Because they already said that, they quoted Puffy. He basically said, I thought I told you that we won't stop. So, I mean, what are we saying here? If you're not going to stop sending weapons and the criminal court and all these other people aren't going to actually do anything like stopping Israel, then they're going to continue to do what they're doing. Anyway, Hanan Dawood Ashrari, a Palestinian politician who also served as the official spokesman of the Palestinian delegation to the Middle East peace process, said U.S. President Joe Biden's actions are astounding. Apparently, no one told Mr. Ashrari that Joe Biden's a Zionist. So his actions are perfectly understandable if you've been paying attention. He says the hypocrisy of Biden's hollow words and crocodile tears on the humanitarian disaster in Gaza while showering Israel with the most lethal and destructive military supplies capable of pulverizing buildings and human beings instantaneously is astounding. Okay, that's a woman. Excuse me. Yeah, Dr. Hanan Ashrari. Okay, so that's a woman. So that's not a her. I mean, not a he, that's her. Again, Mr. Biden is a Zionist, ma'am. Hate to tell you. he's not going to stop those weapons. And they're not going to stop that money. Because the United States and Israel are one entity. They are the host and the parasite. So you are, in essence, at war with the United States of America, whether you know it or not. Let's see what Hamas has to say. Hamas, the Palestinian group, strongly condemned condemned Washington's latest weapons transfer to Israel, saying in a statement that the arms package only confirms the full partnership of this administration in the brutal war of extermination against Palestinians in Gaza. Hamas has recognized the reality of the situation. Hamas said that the move shows that the U.S. is only insisting on increasing humanitarian aid to Gaza and protecting civilians to cover up the ongoing crimes of its ally, Israel. Quote unquote, we call on the international community and the United Nations to impose a complete ban on the supply of weapons to the criminal Zionist entity and to take steps to stop the aggression leading to holding the occupation and its leaders accountable for the violations of crimes against humanity that have been committed. Good luck getting that done, because, yeah. Now, Jordan's foreign minister Ayman Safadi, called on the international community to stop supplying Israel with weapons. I mean, that's the logical choice, but it ain't gonna happen. But remember, I called this the Western Israel versus the world. The countries I've talked about so far, you expect them to say this. Now we get to Greece. What does Greece have to say? Yanis Varoufakis, the former foreign minister of Greece and founder of the Greek political party, MERA 25, called Biden a war criminal. In 2001, Russian President Vladimir Putin on the war criminal label over Chechnya. In 2003, Bush Blair were war criminals vs. Iraq. Over the past 6 months, Biden became complicit in Israeli war crimes. Today, with the latest release of weapons, Biden has become a full-fledged war criminal too. That's the Greek former former finance minister, if I can get it out. Even Bernie Sanders said, hey, this is obscene. Bernie Sanders, he's Jewish, right? Even he's like, all right, it's kind of out of pocket here. He says the U.S. cannot beg Netanyahu stop bombing civilians one day and the next day send him thousands of 2,000-pound bombs that can level entire city blocks, he said in a post on X. We must end our complicity. No more bombs to Israel. Good luck with that, because we already see that, again, they're not going to stop. And we got on and on and on and on. So, I mean, everybody recognizes it, to talk about the complicity, but doesn't matter. Now, we're going to get to the next thing, which has really sparked an uproar and has made nearly everyone oppose Israel / the United States. The latest Israel's killing of aid workers in Gaza is a new blow to humanitarian efforts. Says Israeli airstrikes on aid workers delivering food in Gaza killed at least 7 people, including a U.S.-Canada dual citizen and citizens of Australia, Poland, and the United Kingdom. It's the latest Israeli military action to hit. Wait a minute, hold up. Let's stop right there. It's the latest Israeli military action to hit humanitarian efforts in the besieged Palestinian territory. So that means that this is not a one-off. This has been happening consistently. World Central Kitchen, the charity founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres, said early Tuesday it was immediately pausing operations in the region, delivering a blow to the recently opened sea route for food aid. Ships carrying food sailed away from Gaza after arriving just a day earlier. So, okay. Israel says the strikes were an accident and officials are investigating. The UN says at least 180 humanitarian workers have been killed in the war so far. 180 humanitarian aid workers, not just random civilians, not tourists, not people that were mistaken as fighters, not Palestinians, foreign humanitarian workers. Nearly 200 have been murdered in 6 months. That's literally one a day. And you got to think about how few people would enter a war zone, and you still manage to kill one a day. The U.S. has provided key military and diplomatic support for Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza, had hoped the sea route would open up more food to enter the territory. In northern Gaza, the United Nations says much of the population is on the brink of starvation. South Africa has accused Israel of acts of genocide in its war against Gaza and filed a case at the United Nations highest court. Charges Israel strongly denies. I don't know how that works. Now, all right, let's look at this picture. This Reuters chef Jose Andres said Israel targeted his aid workers systematically, car by car. This is one of their vehicles. Yeah, I don't know if y'all can see that. Maybe can I make this bigger? All right. All right. It has their logo on top. This is where the drone strike occurred, right through the top of the vehicle, right through the logo. Right? They're saying that this was an accident, but they literally had to aim for, think about this. They had to aim for the logo on the car to hit the car, but they say it was an accident. Celebrity chef Jose Andres told Reuters in an emotional interview on Wednesday that an Israeli attack killed 7 of his food aid workers in Gaza, had targeted them systematically car by car. Speaking via video, Andres said World Central Kitchen charity group he founded had clear communication with the Israeli military, which he said knew his aid workers' movements. This was not just a bad luck situation where, oops, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place, Andres said. This was over 1.5, 1.8 kilometers with a very defined humanitarian convoy that had signs on the top, in the roof, a very colorful logo that we obviously are very proud of. It's very clear who we are and what we do. Hold on. They were targeting us in a deconflicting zone in the area controlled by the IDF. They knowing that it was our team moving on the road with 3 cars. The aid workers were killed when a convoy was hit shortly after they oversaw the unloading of 100 tons of food brought to Gaza by sea. Israel's military expressed severe sorrow over the incident, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it was unintentional. Andre said that there may have been more than 3 strikes against the convoy. He rejected Israeli and U.S. assertions that the strikes were not deliberate. Initially, I would say categorically no, Andre said when asked if he accepted that explanation. Even if we were not in coordination with the IDF, no democratic country and no military can be targeting civilians and humanitarians. As for comment on Andre's remarks, an Israeli military spokesperson referred to prior comments by Chief of Staff Herzl Halevi, which he called the incident a grave mistake and said the attack was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. At this point, does it matter? You got 7 people dead, and you claim that you didn't do it, or you didn't do it intentionally. Now, we're gonna listen to Mr. Andres, who I was not really familiar with before this. But listen to what he says in this clip. He says something very, very, very important. You don't want to miss this.
Obviously, in the first minutes and hours, but very clear. The situation began being very obvious when we began seeing images of these bodies and these passports in the hospital that confirm these were our people. At the end is what we know, what everybody knows, that 7 team members between the specialty security people we have, 3 British individuals and 3 international crew plus 1 Palestinian, 7 people dead. But there are 7 on top of a list of more than another 190 humanitarian workers that they've been killed over the last 6 months. Humanitarians and civilians should never be paying the consequences of war. This is a basic principle of humanity. At the time, this looks like it's not a war against terrorism anymore. Seems this is a war against humanity itself. You cannot be destroying every building. You cannot be destroying every hospital, every school. You cannot be targeting humanitarian. You cannot be targeting children. You cannot be fighting the basis of what humanity should be standing for. If we were targeted this way, I need to understand that this was not vicious. I need to understand that this was not by somebody that is above law and order. that decided just to kill us because, I don't know, maybe because I did a tweet that was very strong against President Netanyahu. I don't know. Obviously, that's why we need to have an investigation that is neutral and is above IDF. I believe will be good intentions on anybody, and they will tell the story whatever they want to say. But what I know is that we were targeted deliberately, non-stop, until everybody was dead in this convoy. That cannot be the role of an army. That cannot be the role of an army that has hundreds of drones above Gaza in any single moment.
I don't know if y'all caught what he said. He said this no longer appears to be a war against Hamas, a war against terrorism. It appears to be a war against humanity. I didn't say that. I'm quoting Mr. Jose Andres. He said the state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, the Jews, Jose Andres said, are waging or appear to be waging a war against humanity. That's not what I said. It's not a DC Radical 1 quote. It's not an Irritated Genie quote. It's not a Hamas quote. You know what I'm saying? It's not a quote from the Sharif of Mecca or the Shah of Iran or the Ayatollah of Iran. The Shah is an old dude they threw out. Or Vladimir Putin, or anybody that any person that you would expect to say a seemingly hyperbolic statement. It's a man who's a chef who sent some people to do some humanitarian work and thought he was doing something good and positive and just wanted to give some people some food, and all his people got blown up. And as he said, systematically. And he comes to the conclusion like, yeah, they don't care about anybody. They'll kill anyone. They're out to kill anyone who gets in their way. And so that's why I wanted to play that clip, because when I heard him say it, I watched 3 different versions of that interview, and only one of them kept that statement in. And I thought that was a key point, because it points out the mentality of the people who the United States is funding to wage. You know, if they were Muslim, we would say they're waging a jihad, but they're not. Right? Now, that would be bad enough, right? If tax dollars are going to that. And if everybody's getting mad at what Israel's doing in Gaza, you'd be like, wow, man, that's pretty bad. But let's be honest, most people kind of like just resign to the fact that they're going to do what they do. But then this happens. Randomly, seemingly out of nowhere. Iran says Israel, really? This is what we're doing here? We just gonna block the whole thing. Says Israel bombs its embassy in Syria and kills commanders. Now, hold up. Let's think about this. You got a whole war, right? In Gaza. We have a Jewish president in Ukraine having a whole war, which they're losing badly, by the way. That's why you don't hear about it anymore, because they're losing. I just want to say that. And then suddenly you want to think about this. You kill Iranians in Syria. So you have, in essence, attacked 2 countries at once while waging war against another country. Let's read. Suspected Israeli warplanes bomb Iran's embassy in Syria. Like, how's bombing the embassy not a war crime? Can anyone explain that to me? Like, how's that not a terrorist attack? Embassy, am I wrong? Are embassies supposed to be protected venues in a foreign country that cannot be attacked? Is that not against international law? Can somebody please inform me? Because I'm genuinely asking questions, because you don't hear about this all the time. This doesn't happen all the time. Like, people go to embassies, people seek asylum in embassies. Like, if you could just blow up an embassy, people can't seek asylum anywhere. Anyway, I digress. It says, suspected Israeli warplanes bombed Iran's embassy in Syria on Monday in a strike that Iran said killed 7 of its military advisors, including 3 senior commanders, marking a major escalation in Israel's war with its regional adversaries. Well, excuse me, I didn't know Israel was still at war with its regional adversaries, but I guess I wasn't paying attention. Reuters reporters at the site in the Meza district of Damascus say emergency workers clambering atop rubble of a destroyed building. So I don't know if y'all can see that picture, but that used to be a building. Inside the diplomatic compound adjacent to the main Iranian embassy building, emergency vehicles were parked outside. An Iranian flag hung from a pole by the debris. We strongly condemn this atrocious terrorist attack that targeted the Iranian consulate building in Damascus and killed a number of innocents, said Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad, who was seen at the site along with Syria's interior minister. Iran's ambassador to Syria said the strike hit a consulary building in the embassy compound and that his residence was on his residence was on the top 2 floors. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said in a statement that 7 Iranian military advisors died in the strike, including Mohammad Reza Zahedi, a senior commander in the Quds Force, which is an elite foreign espionage and paramilitary arm. Well, if they were elite foreign espionage group, they were not on point on this day. Israel has long targeted Iran's military installations in Syria and those of its proxies, but Monday's attack was the first time Israel hit the vast embassy compound itself. It has ramped up those strikes in parallel with its campaign against Iranian-backed Palestinian group Hamas, which, quote unquote, ignited the Gaza war. We talked about earlier what came before that. And there's something else that happened too that we have not talked about. But anyway, so as we talk about Western Israel, which we're standing in, versus the rest of the world, we're starting to see now the rest of the world part of this equation. Right? We got other parts of the region which are now irritated by this attack. But let's go on to, okay, I don't know what this is, but can we bring up, let's go to the Jerusalem Post. Russia says Israeli attack on Iranian consulate is an act of aggression, and they request the United Nations Security Council meeting. The Kremlin said that the suspected Israeli attack is an act of aggression and a violation of all foundations of Israel, international law. Says Russia condemned an Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Syria, called on the Jewish state to cease such completely unacceptable actions, and has requested a meeting with the UN Security Council regarding the strike. The UNSC will hold an open meeting at Russia's request, according to TASS, citing Dmitry Polyansky, Russia's first deputy permanent representative to the UN. After Israel's airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus today, Iranians have turned to the UN Security Council to condemn this action. Polyansky posted on X. Following their letter, we have requested an open briefing of the UN Security Council. The Maltese presidency has scheduled it for 3 p.m. New York time on April 2nd. So that time has already passed. All right. Suspected Israeli warplanes bombed Israel's embassy in Syria. We talked about that earlier. The strike killed 7 military advisors. Said we strongly condemn this action. The Russian foreign military said such aggressive actions by Israel are absolutely unacceptable and must be stopped. The Kremlin said on Tuesday that a suspected Israeli airstrike against the Iranian consulate in Damascus is an act of aggression. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said such attacks violated foundations of international law. All right, time for us to tally up the scores. On one side, we have America and Israel, or Western Israel, and NATO, which is signed on to defend Western Israel at all costs. On the other side, we have almost everybody else. We have Iran, and Iran is connected with Syria and Jordan and some other people in the region. Iran is thus connected to Russia, which is connected to China. And we have more and more African countries being connected to Russia and China, which means that basically a lot of African countries are taking a side against Israel. And there's a good reason they should do that, because here's the thing. Israel has already stated publicly, and I do not have the article, but I got to find it so I can put it up. They've already stated that they have plans to go into Africa. Right? Now, y'all know I do not normally recommend anybody else's videos. Right? But there is a video from African Liberation Media. Brother Amos. He interviews an Azanian political candidate. And he states that Azania is under control, not of just any random whites like we see, but under control of what he states is a Jewish elite. My point is that if it gets to the point where Israel is under so much heat that they're threatened by Russia and a conglomerate of nations connected to Russia, there's 2 places that those citizens are going to go to, citizens of Israel are going to go to: America and South Africa. You know, America and South Africa, there's a weird parallel between those countries that's been going on for that I noticed years ago and going on for a long time, right? But here's the thing. Here's the problem for the world. The problem for the world is that, as we've seen, Israel literally pulls the military strings. And we've seen this going all the way back to post 9/11, where General, Wesley Clark, I believe, talked about the plan to destroy the 7 different, I believe it was 7 different Middle East countries. I should have brought that clip up, but I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, right? And most of those countries were knocked off, including Libya was one, and Iraq was. Those were 2 of the ones that I remember. So Israel literally pulls the strings of America's military. That's a problem because if Israel has a problem with Russia, and Russia already has a problem with the United States, because again, the whole Russian-Ukrainian conflict was over U.S. labs in the Ukraine, which were storing, according to Russia, biological weapons agents, right? That's how that started. We forget that part. We forget that it wasn't some random thing where Putin rolled over one day, pulled up his slippers, had some vodka in his coffee, and said, "You know what? Let's annex that." No, that's not what happened. So we see that this conflagration can easily get out of hand, and that the United States government, the United States military, can be led by the nose, not into a conflict just with Hamas, some small group, but with Russia and a Russia-China bloc, which draws in all of NATO, which invariably leads to World War III, which means a lot of people that don't have anything to do with it will be eradicated. That's why I did this show, because with each bomb that is dropped by Israel in Syria or Iran or Egypt or some other place that is not Gaza, then we move closer to total destruction for everybody. And very few people seem to be pointing out this obvious point. It's so readily apparent that I just can't believe that people aren't saying this every day, that, hey, Israel's trying to drag America into World War III. And we control the money and the weapons to even fight. What is happening? What are we doing? What are we thinking about? Why don't we just tell them no more guns? So, if you want to, and the sister asked me the question, when she asked, she's like, why would Congress make it so that the president can't unilaterally step away from NATO? It's because it's very simple. The president, one of these people that's in the election, is an open Zionist. The other one, he supports Israel too, but he considers Putin a friend. There's a chance, though not a large one, that he could just say, hey, I'm not going to engage in this, and I'm not going to fund this, and I'm not going to fund NATO. All you do is on your own, because I'm not fighting my man Putin, and I'm just going to work on America. So that's why they hamstrung him before you don't even get a chance to not fight the war. You don't get a chance to not fund this stuff. You don't get a chance to not get engaged in this, because we're going to make sure that you're roped into this whether you like it or not. So even voting for a president that may be non-interventionalist, I don't know Kennedy's position, but let's say he's non-interventionalist. I'm just saying, I have no idea. It don't matter because he's roped into it. So literally, we're being slowly but very effectively dragged towards, in essence, for our biblical people to understand, the war of Armageddon by a criminal settler colony. And nobody apparently wants to say it. So I'll be the one to say it. And I'm sure this video probably won't stay up long. It'll definitely, I mean, a 75% chance it'll be demonetized. But in the words of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, somebody has got to tell it like it is. So, brothers and sisters, you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1, at Twitter at dc_radical_one, on OTWTube at dcradical1, at Cash App, $dcradical1. Of course, this is a YouTube, and you can email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. Before I go, tentatively, I know I said it's going to be this week. Tentatively, I've talked to Brother Jenny. He is scheduled to appear Sunday night at 8 p.m. here on the center. We will discuss his recent trip to the continent, and we will talk about some of these issues that we talked about tonight. And we may even get into the some of this Puffy stuff, because I've seen some more stuff with that. So I'm gonna ask him. I'm not sure how much of that he has paid attention to. And thanks to everyone that has donated tonight. So also, I do have a couple of radical reports that are coming up that I'm working on. And this weekend, I'm going to start working on my next set of lectures to edit. I'll let you all know when those are available. Once again, like I said, everyone that donates $20 or more, you will get sent what looks like is going to become the lecture of the month until I run out of lectures. And then when that happens, maybe I will do another one. We shall see. We shall see how that goes. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on other social media platforms. With that, I say a BB4ODA and straight black pride.